right. It's budget day, everybody. It's budget day, everybody. My Carney's first budget just landed. What do you guys? If you guys haven't seen it yet, I've actually put a link in the chat in the comments for you, in the video description for you guys. You guys go. You can go catch that. Grab that real quick. Obviously, I saw this at work, so I couldn't really react right away. But the budget is full of all sorts of things. Let's just say not everybody is gonna be happy. There's gonna be not. I don't think anybody's gonna be happy. Like there's very few people that'll say they got everything they wanted out of this budget. I don't think anybody can say they got everything they wanted out of this budget. But I think the media has done a bit of an exhaustive job trying to. They've covered this thing to death. But I want to hear from you guys tonight. I want to hear from you guys tonight. Have you seen the budget? If you've seen the budget, what were your first impressions? This show is going to be is all obviously all about you guys tonight. I want to hear what you guys is your first impressions of that budget. Uh, if you have not seen it so far, as I said, I put I put a link in the description in the description for this particular live show. I've put that in the chat. Sorry, in the description, and you guys can go download that. But I want to get started right away. Surprise or no surprise, I gotta say I told you guys so. I told you a few weeks ago, maybe even last week, I told you again that I think that the deficit will be somewhere around $83 billion. Well then, this is the right moment for me to tell you that I guess I was right again, and I'm not surprised. Well, it turns out the deficit that the Carney liberals, that McCartney and Francois Philippe Champagne, the finance minister, put out today, showed a deficit of $78.3 billion. So I've done it again, you guys. I've done it again. But as I said, I want to know what were your first impressions. Obviously, when you land on a 78 point, it doesn't make a $78.3 billion deficit any better. The fact that I predicted it, that's not the whole point. It doesn't make it any better. But what was your first impression when you saw the deficit? $78.3 billion. I know some people were talking of like $100 million or $100 billion. And obviously the conservatives wanted to see $48 billion. And in that sense, nobody is going what they wanted out of this. But what was your first impression? What was your first impression when you saw the budget? Obviously, $78 billion is the deficit. There were a few more things in that particular budget that I wanna go through with you guys today. Actually, there were a few really interesting things. For those of you who were who are on the side of lower immigration, well, there was something for you in this budget. There was something for you in this budget. But I want you guys to get in the comments. Tell me your first impression when you saw the budget. On immigration, guess what? So apparently, I want to see if I can find the exact numbers here for you. So apparently, the number of permanent residents will be cut down to 380,000 per year from 395,000, which was initially planned. And yet this, the number of temporary residents will be cut down by half. By half. Wow. And oh yeah, but if you have not had time to go through the budget, obviously I understand that because this budget is thick. When it's if you see the full budget, there's kind of like an abridged version of like 25 pages with like really high level stuff for the most part. But if you go through like the detailed budget, it's like almost 500 pages, right? So I'm sure people will be churning through what this thing says and trying to figure out what makes sense over the next few days. So on the for those of you who care about immigration and decreasing the numbers of people being brought into the country, there was something for you in there. And if you're one of those people that believe that more people coming to Canada was affecting the cost of living, stressing out infrastructure, inflating the price of housing, those kinds of things, this is good news for you because there are less people expected based on these plans to come to Canada over the next 4 to 5 years. So, what do you guys think of this? You guys get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts about this. How do you feel about this? I ask because I mean there's a little bit of a concern here for me in terms of the immigration numbers here. Obviously we are this country's trying to build aggressively over the next few years. It does worry me in terms of like, okay, are we gonna run into a situation where we're having a labor shortage? Are we going to be able to? Hey, Fox Club, you're here. Braveheart, hi as well. Hello, hello, hello. So, welcome to the live show. If you missed what I said in the beginning, by the way, if you as you guys get in, please just let me know who I've got in the comments. I just want to shout you out. Happy to have you here. I'm happy you're here. Did you guys get to see the McCartney's first budget today? I want to get your first impressions. You guys gotta give me my flowers, man. I predicted the budget deficit will be $83 billion. It turned out to be $78 billion, but I was closer than anybody. So you guys gotta give me my flowers, guys. But nonetheless, I want to know what were your first impressions when you saw the budget? If you haven't seen the budget yet, a it is a thick notebook. It is a textbook. It's 500 pages. 500 pages. I kid you not. Well, almost 500 pages. Maybe short 2 pages. But I've put a link in the video description. If you guys wanted to download it and have at it at your own time, you can. But what did I say? So the deficit, $78.3 billion. They have also chosen to cut the number of permanent residents down from 380,000 people per year. Uh, they decided to cut it down to 380,000 people per year. Initially, the targets for this year, I think, was 395,000. For temporary residents, they've decided to cut that down by half, which is crazy when you think about it. But how do you think cutting down the government choosing to cut down on temporary residents is going to impact affordability? Because I know there are people on the right. Ooh, hoo, hoo, hoo. Fox Club said, "I'm not sold on Carney, but I want to like him." No, don't we all? This is something I tell my friends. Yeah, Marco, you might look at, I mean, maybe if you're a person with a conservative persuasion, you might be like, you know what, you don't like McCartney, maybe it's not your cup of tea, maybe he doesn't do the things that you want to see. But I will tell you one thing, if you're like me, you want McCartney to succeed, because if McCartney does not succeed, we are absolutely fucked. I've said this before. He has to succeed. So I totally agree. Like, no, there are not many people that are sold on Carney, especially because he is acting so suspiciously like a conservative. Like, I was looking at this budget, and actually, there's a member of the audience here, one of you guys actually, that sent me a message today after he saw the budget. I was just having a little back and forth with him. Oh, by the way, if you guys wanted to, obviously, if you want to chat with me, I have a I have a link in obviously in the channel description. That I have my email there, so you guys can always reach out to me. Doesn't always have to be in the open forum like this if you guys are not comfortable with that. But this particular person, his handle is BB. Maybe you've seen him on some of the videos that I make. But he messaged me and said, And this is a good talking point, a good launch pad for us to talk about this because he messaged me and because BB, just for context, is a liberal. He's a liberal, so opposite of you, Fox Club, opposite of Braveheart as well, because I know Braveheart is pretty conservative as well. um, but BB, the liberal, says, in case I don't see you tonight, here are the problems with the budgets. It is a right wing budget, and he had a problem with this. And he says there are tax cuts for the rich and corporations, and there was, to be fair, there are tax cuts for corporations there. That's another part of the budget that was interesting. In order to, obviously, this budget is meant to use public money. It's meant to use our tax dollars to catalyze private investment, right? And the government has incorporated some tax cuts, some tax exemptions for corporations in there. And part of it is that corporations can now write off essentially the cost of setting up a plant and equipping that plant for the first year that they are in service essentially. And and so that they expect to spur companies to want to invest in Canada because you get a massive tax write-off there, right? And so this is what BB is talking about when he says that there are tax cuts for the rich and corporations there. But personally, looking at seeing what Canada is going through right now, the amount of investment that has left this country, I'm not mad at this, and I don't think people of a conservative persuasion would be mad at this because right now we all want to see more investment in this country. Donald Trump has been working hard to take our investments, right? We need jobs, we need people, more money, more foreign money to come into this country, create jobs and increase the standard of living for people. Okay, so from my perspective, I'm not mad at this. I was glad to see that there was something in terms of spurring investment and convince and making this country more open for investment. Okay, so what else was BB saying? By the way, you guys get in the comments. I'm happy to discuss what you felt about the budget. Just put it in the comments. I want to hear from you guys. So it also says here, BB says they're slashing jobs for the sake of slashing jobs. I want to talk about this as well. So part of the budget, in the budget, they are cutting 40,000. Obviously, they're cutting 40,000 private sector jobs. Sorry, they're cutting 40,000 public service jobs over the next 4 to 5 years, essentially. And they're cutting 16,000 jobs in just this particular year. Well, over the next year alone, right? And that is quite ironic because why, when you think about this, why did Pierre Poilievre lose his riding, or what is the presumed reason Pierre Poilievre lost his riding in Ontario before he moved to Battle River Crowfoot? He lost because Pierre Poilievre was campaigning on the fact that he was going to cut the size of the public service, and the people elected a liberal government thinking, you know what, maybe we're safe. And the irony of it now is that, well, there are going to be cuts to the public service anyways, which is quite hilarious when you think about it. Not the fact that people are losing their jobs, but because, again, as I said, McCartney is acting suspiciously. Apart from maybe the spending, the level of the spending, McCartney is acting suspiciously like a conservative, right? Um, but there will be job cuts in the public sector, in the public service. So, so Fox Club is asking what kind of jobs are those? To be honest, I'm not too sure what that actually looks like. So a lot of people assume this would just be layoffs, and I imagine these are like roles in different like government departments that maybe are not necessarily going to be funded or something, I imagine most of those cuts might come from departments that are gradually being phased out. I'll give you an example of stuff that McCartney is trying to phase out with this particular budget. There was a commitment that Justin Trudeau made. I just learned about this in the news. Justin Trudeau made a commitment planting trees or something, and that is fundamentally, yeah, or is effectively being phased out by McCartney's budget. Now, what they want to do, McCartney wants to focus more on. He says he wants to focus more on results. He says he wants to focus more on. Oh yeah, yeah. I see you, Fox Club. He says he wants to focus more on less arbitrary things. Maybe in some sense you can say the science of one tree, and well, not the science, but the multiplier effect of one tree in terms of emissions reduction versus some of the tech solutions. Maybe the tree is not the most effective way to handle those things, right? um but what the way that McCartney is thinking of, or not, I shouldn't say the way he's thinking, but the way he seems to be pointing to in terms of reducing the size of the public service is one by essentially letting giving people the option of retiring early. I mean, I know, right? Who can retire early in 2025? In this economy, in Carney's economy, who can retire early? I don't know. But they're giving people the option of retiring early, is what I hear. And they are also, what was the other thing? There will be layoffs for sure, but they want to make most of it by just you know less. Um, they want to make sure most of it, or it seems like most of it will not be, or, well, all of it will not be layoffs. A lot of it will be people retiring, choosing to retire early, those kinds of things. So that's what the jobs are. Oh yeah. So there's some more interesting things here. So it also says here it reduces pensions and healthcare benefits. Okay, as I said, this thing is 500 pages, and I got to be honest, I did not see that it reduced pensions and healthcare benefits. From what I could see, because I'm sure a lot of you are interested in whether the budget cuts social services. A lot of people were concerned about this, right? As far as I could see in my quick look at the budget, it retains a lot of the programs, that a lot of the social programs that Justin Trudeau committed to, right? Now, if you're things like planting a whole bunch of trees, you're shit out of luck. Right? It doesn't mean they won't plant trees, but they don't want to be. It doesn't seem like they'll be funding that going forward, right? Um, but as far as I know, there's no real reduction to the social services. The difference here with Balkani's approach is that he effectively they will he his plan seems to be not to grow the social programs over the next 4 to 5 years, right? Where maybe a Justin Trudeau might have committed to higher old age security, committed to more healthcare transfers, those kinds of things. It would seem, and maybe this is the reason Makani did not negotiate with the Bloc Québécois, because you might recall, and we covered this a few live shows ago, where the Bloc Québécois we're being, in my opinion, you guys know I don't like the Bloc Québécois very much. I'm self-confessed. I do not like the Bloc Québécois. Okay, I do not lie about this, right? But the Bloc Québécois were very much like the party saying, you got to save money, you got to save money. And they even said that today. They were after the budget came out, they were like, I think they were saying something about, I forget what it was now, but they were basically, at some point when they were describing their demands, it was essentially that they were saying to save money in Western Canada by cutting subsidies to essentially to oil companies, right? That was one of their demands. And then at the same time, they were requesting higher health transfers, requesting credit, some transfers for first time home buyers, all those kinds of things, right? Things that will cost money, things that cost money to create, but at the same time they were telling the government to save money. It was kind of a mess. But you guys know I don't like the block of Equa. Anyways, so as far as I know, just responding to what BB was asking here, I did not see really remarkable cuts to social programs. So if that is something that was of concern to you, looking at this budget, that I don't think that was the thing. Okay. Um. Okay. So the other thing here is it says the budget, this liberal person is accusing the government. It says the budget forgot about those who need government services the most. I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, let me see if I can pull this budget up here. Um, as far as I could see, it keeps a lot of the social services that many of us have come to expect. But now, I want those of you, but I want to read this particular person, being a conservative, says these are the good things he saw in this particular budget. It increases infrastructure, and that is true. I saw this as well in my little perusal of the budget. It does increase infrastructure. Um, it didn't completely abandon climate change. Yes, we got to talk about this part of the budget. Now, Carney has created a condition essentially where they might drop the emission cap. And some of you might remember that this is one of the things that Danielle Smith, the premier of Alberta, has been calling for months now, right? She says it is one of the things that prevents companies that want to that prevents investment in oil and gas, and prevents and kind of impedes the growth of oil and gas in Western Canada, and or in provinces that have interest in oil and gas. And essentially, McCartney has now created a pathway for the emissions cap to go away. Essentially, obviously going to revamp the carbon pricing system. We knew about that even before this budget came out. And also, it would seem that the Pathways Plus project, which is I think focused on carbon capture, or something like that, is probably going to be amongst the next five nation building projects that are going to come out in the next few weeks. I think by the end of this month, actually. And so, if these provinces with interest in oil and gas are able to match to show essentially that they have other means of controlling emissions, the emissions cap might go away. The emissions cap is very likely to go away. Is the impression that Marconi is given here, and I think that will make people like Daniel Smith very happy and Western Canada very happy, because he has provided the pathway here and essentially put the ball in their court, while not necessarily, flat on abandoning climate action, which is kind of a cool thing that McCartney did. Um, okay. Anyways, I don't want to. BB said he was gonna try and be here, but if he's not here, I don't want to dwell all to spend the whole time on his comment there. But you guys, Folks Club, R Braveheart, you guys get in the comments. Tell me how you feel about this budget. From what I've told you so far, okay, you've heard about the possibility of the emissions cap going away and that the potential benefits of that for Western Canada. You've heard about this $78 billion deficit, which is crazy, but at the same time, it's not as crazy as we were expecting. And there is a new development that maybe some of you have not heard of. You know, we were at some point we were saying, how were the liberals going to get the votes they need in order to pass this budget, right? And we painted a few scenarios. We said, well, we don't. Okay, so Braveheart is asking a brilliant question here. It says, will they remove the debt ceiling? Will they remove the debt ceiling? Well, so technically, we don't really have a debt ceiling. The government sort of imposed it's a kind of a self-imposed fiscal barrier for the government where they've committed to reducing the debt to GDP basically from now over the next 5 years. Okay? And the problem, obviously, with this division of the budget into a capital and an investment side is the fact that, well, it does mean that you're going to be spending a lot. But their goal, and they have this brilliant chart in the budget where their goal over the next 5 years is to get to a point where maybe sometime in 27, 28, I think it was, the spending on operations will basically be zero. It will be balanced, right? And then the capital side will account for most of the spending that the government will be spending. This is to be fair. I know I criticized the division of the budget into a capital side and an investment side, but really this is the modern way to do it. This is how many. This is not particular to Canada. Many economies, many developed economies across the world do this already. I just heard today apparently BC does that, and I didn't even know that because I didn't look that closely at the. I haven't actually examined the BC budget in that way. But it while I criticize it, and I criticize it because I think it gives room for and this is something we're gonna get into very soon. But I did want to cover something with you guys, but I'll catch up on your comments first. Braveheart says they'll get their votes from. Okay, that's not Braveheart. That's Adoy Fashion says they'll get their vote from the NDP. Well, actually, that this is where it gets very, very interesting. There's a bit of Game of Thrones going on. You're gonna eat your hat. I promise you. So we learned today that Conservative MP, Nova Scotia Conservative MP Chris D'Entremont will be crossing the floor from the Conservatives to the Liberals. Yes. You know when we were so focused on maybe the Liberals will get their votes from the NDP, maybe they'll get their votes from the Bloc Québécois, maybe they'll get their votes from maybe they'll just anywhere else but the Conservatives. But today we learned that a Conservative MP today resigned slash was kicked out, whatever, is now a Liberal. So that means before the budget was presented today, the Liberals only needed 3 votes in order to get this budget across. That they have 169 right now. They needed 3 to complete their majority and essentially be home and dry, home and hosed. Now they need 1 less vote because they've successfully gotten 1 Conservative MP to cross the floor. He's now a Liberal. And presumably, I mean, why would he cross and become a Liberal if he wouldn't vote with them? It would appear that this particular Liberal, now Liberal MP is going. Why do you seem so surprised? Says, wait, a Conservative became a Liberal. Is that allowed since he got elected as a Conservative? It is allowed. And one of the things you should know is that this person being a Nova Scotian MP, yeah, okay, I'll get back to your comment there, Fox Club. In in Nova Scotia particularly, the difference between the liberals and the conservative the difference between the liberals and the conservatives ideologically is really not that much. And you will when you think about it, Carney has moved the liberals so back. Well, I shouldn't say he has moved them so far to the right because fundamentally it looks like he has moved the liberals far to the right because Trudeau was so far left, right? because Trudeau was so focused. It looks like he's doing something brilliant economically because Trudeau was so focused on social policy as against the economic policy in that way, right? So that's why it almost looks like McCartney is doing something completely, just right wing. But anyways, my points to you there are is that you know it's not against the rules. You can do that actually, and the fact that if you've been watching British Columbia, there's been a lot of craziness going on in the amongst the representatives there. Many people have defected from the BC Conservatives to other places. Oh, Angel 7. Oh, coming in hot there says Carney is woke. You gotta give me more than that. Why what do you mean Carney is woke? What has he done in this budget that makes you say Carney is woke? Give me more. Give me more. Give me more. Anyways, uh, Fox Club says if Polyev can't win the next election, who replaces him? Smith or Doug Ford? Woohoo! That's a deep one, you know. I don't think, you know. Yeah. Carney is a globalist, but I feel like the term globalist gets a very negative rap these days. Being a globalist is being a globalist and being a person in favor of free trade is not necessarily as evil as people make it seem these days. But but your question, I shouldn't fly past that. You're saying should Daniel Smith or Doug Ford replace Pierre Polyev? So are you assuming here that Polyev won't survive is next the leadership review? Because I would imagine I would imagine Polyev survives his leadership review. And to be fair, I don't think he's done too badly. I think he Polyev as the official opposition leader, I don't think he does too badly as badly as people think. The only thing is that people might be tired of his rhetoric. It does get really exhausting. It feels like it's negative all the time from Pierre Polyev. I will tell you that. But between Daniel Smith and Ford, if I was picking, I worry that Doug Ford is a bit too performative. And obviously I don't live in Ontario, so I don't know. I can't justify how Doug Ford has won what three majorities in his time as leader and spent so long in his time as premier. I, what I've been told by friends is that well, the opposition is shit. Okay, that's what I've been told. Obviously, I do not live in Ontario, and I didn't pay attention to the race when they had the election. But in terms of like with Danielle Smith, there is the worry about where her loyalties lie, whether she's a bit too close to the to oil and gas and the lobby there, and whether she's she's going to be a bit too beholden to the United States and won't do what is needful. I think we all agree that it is highly important that Canada diversifies away from the United States. And I don't know if Danielle Smith represents that solution. That is maybe my issue with Danielle Smith. But a lot of people know that she is, and also there's a lot of controversy in her province right now. I could tell you about like obviously the teachers strike and the use of the notwithstanding clause and some of those things. And I don't know if she's the kind of person that is capable of, and to be fair, I don't know if Doug Ford is any better. And maybe this is why if I was them, I might stick with Pierre Polyev, because Doug Ford has had his moments as well. He has had issues with using the notwithstanding clause to try and enforce the government's will. And I think I mentioned this on Sunday, where like it would seem that governments nowadays are more willing to test the limits of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and see where people start to push back. You know, if you don't know what the notwithstanding clause is, it basically allows the government to override certain charter rights for a period of 5 years or something, and it can essentially get renewed over and over, right? Essentially. And in Alberta, what happened recently was the teachers were on strike, asking for better pay, asking for smaller class sizes, and instead of the government finding a resolution with them, they just legislated it away. They decided to use the notwithstanding clause to essentially send the teachers back to class without actually giving them maybe what they deserve, but also, negotiating in good faith with them, right? And there is a worry there. I mean, another thing that is coming down the pipeline, maybe some of you have seen this, is the liberals, the federal liberals, are seeking the power to be able to cancel what's it called now? They want to be able to cancel visa applications at any stage, essentially, if it is in the public interest. And they do not really outline what the public interest is, or how they would, like, they don't outline any guardrails, essentially. So which it gives the government a little bit too much power, and that seems to be a trend now, where a lot of the laws and a lot of the actions, um okay, okay, yeah, that seems to be a thing where a lot of the laws and a lot of the actions of government seems to be pushing the barriers of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms a little bit. And obviously on Sunday we talked about the Supreme Court striking down mandatory minimums. If you guys were not here, then we can always talk about that. You can ask me in the comments if you want me to talk about the mandatory minimum for child pornography being struck down by the Supreme Court. We can talk about that a bit more. Okay, so Fox Club is saying I only said that because they seem like yeah, they are very popular, because they are very popular, and that is fair. Um, in terms of whether they have what it takes to lead on the national stage, personally, I find Doug Ford to be more performative, maybe less of an actual person that can achieve something. In that sense, maybe I don't know if I would have any confidence in Doug Ford as the Prime Minister of Canada. Danielle Smith is interesting, but I don't think she has the finesse to lead on the national stage. She's the kind of person that is probably in my mind better suited to leading in a province where people agree with her more. She seems like kind of person that will try to build. Fox Club said Doug Ford puts me to sleep. Ooh. Okay, so let me get to Lady Genuine. Lady Genuine says, greetings, Lady Genuine. I haven't heard anything about the budget yet today, so I figured I come here to get the scoop. Okay, so here's the scoop. I was right about the deficit. I said $83 billion. It actually was $78 billion. The liberals are going to cut the permanent residents by 15,000. Their initial target for this year was 395,000. Now it's 380,000. But the big news is that they will be cutting the temporary residents coming to Canada over the next 5 years, or over the next year at least, by half. So that's big. What else are they doing? They are preserving all the social programs. Well, most of the social programs that Justin Trudeau committed to your dental care, all those kinds of things. They're not touching those. So there is something for people there. Um, Obviously, I asked you guys earlier the fact that obviously some people believe that the increase in population has partly been responsible for some of the affordability issues that we're seeing. Well, now with the population expected to come down because they're bringing in less temporary residents, less permanent residents. So you, if you believe that at the time, well, you will believe now that you know affordability should improve with less demand on housing. Rent should come down, those kinds of things. And rent, to be fair, rent has been coming down where I am. I don't know about where you are. Okay, so Braveheart is coming at me hard here. Braveheart says, I don't support you that Carney behaves conservatives, or that Carney behaves conservative. He is a liberal, left as it is. Okay, okay. Would Well, you say he's a liberal. Yes, by name he is a liberal, but you're saying he doesn't behave conservative. I mean, where were you for Justin Trudeau's time in office, person? Where were you? Where were you when Justin Trudeau was the Prime Minister of Canada? Trust me, McCartney is right of who Justin Trudeau was. I'll tell you that much. In fact, some people might argue that McCartney might be even more conservative than Pierre Poilievre in certain things. I don't know, but that might be going too far. Actually, the conservatives might find that insulting. I would say McCartney is more conservative than Pierre Poilievre, but I mean, think about all the things that McCartney did, right? He's cutting the public service. I mean, what did Pierre Poilievre say he was gonna do? It's almost like people are more people are looking at this, but is wrapped in a liberal wrapping paper, and people are like, oh, that's fine. He's a liberal, but the reality of it is he's cutting the public service as Poilievre said he would. He is possibly going to do away with the emissions cap, as Poilievre would probably have done. He's cutting taxes, like Poilievre said he would have done. And so you struggle. I mean, sure, he's retaining more social programs than Poilievre probably would have. I'll give him that, okay? Oh boy. Folks Club, I'd be curious if you were looking at sort of some of the conservatives. The problem is I'm looking at the conservative bench and I'm thinking, if not Poilievre, who else? Who else can do that job better? I mean, we've seen Andrew Scheer. I mean, to be honest, we've seen Andrew Scheer as leader. Jamil Giovanni, I don't know if you guys know, you might remember the bald guy, Jamil Giovanni. Um, I don't know that they have a lot of options right now. There's gonna be, maybe there's a hidden gem somewhere, that someone that's gonna come out of the woodworks, and you'll be like, ooh, where was this guy? Oh, Melissa. Melissa speaks very well. And here's the thing though. She's very, yeah, she is Melissa Lantman. Those of you who are not familiar, Melissa Lantman is the deputy leader to Pierre Poilievre, obviously, and she debates very well. What I don't know is if she has the chops on policy. That is my that. Oh, Michael Barrett. Northern Numbers is coming in with Michael Barrett. I don't know who Michael Barrett is actually. I've never heard the name. I've never heard the name. I should look. I'll look him up. I'll look him up. Maybe it might be worth doing a video about close to the time when Pierre Poilievre's leadership review is going to be. I might do a review on who could take over from Pierre Poilievre. But none of the numbers. I'll be curious. Why do you? What is so special about this Michael Barrett? Get in the comments and let me know. Actually, I'll be curious to know why you say that. Braveheart says Justin Trudeau is a social justice PM, while McCartney is an economist PM. You cannot compare them. They ran on different platforms. It doesn't make McCartney a conservative. Well, it does make McCartney a conservative when he does all the things that Pierre Poilievre said he was going to do. Right? I just told you, tax cuts. He just cut taxes. He cut taxes. The conservatives are the party that cuts taxes. Don't you know this? You don't know this? No, the conservatives are the party that cuts taxes. McCartney just cut corporate taxes. Some people might say he just cut taxes for the rich. That is exactly what the conservatives would do. What are you saying? What are you saying here? Look, you cannot say for sure like McCartney is not Justin Trudeau. Without question. Okay, without question. Anyways, I did want to. I told you I was telling you about the whole who would vote for the budget picture. Another numbers. I'm waiting for your justification for Michael Barrett. So get in the comments and let me know. But I was telling you guys that today Chris D'Entremont crossed the floor from the Conservatives to the Liberals. So that means that the Liberals now need two more votes from opposition in order to. Okay, okay. So So Michael Barrett was an ethics critic. Okay, I will do my research because I don't want to speak out of turn here. I'll do my research on Michael Barrett and see what I see what pops out to me. Melissa Lampman is a good shout. I don't know that she's very different in the way she would run compared to Pierre Poilievre. So because the big question for the conservatives is this, right? Can can well, I mean, this was the problem they faced when Andrew Scheer was leader, when Erin O'Toole was leader, in the sense that can a conservative win in Canada running as a true, I shouldn't say true conservative, but running on really far right policies, sort of like maybe what Donald Trump would run. Can a person run on such a thing and win in Canada? And and in some regard, Pierre Poilievre had some success with that, but ultimately that rhetoric was what cost him becoming prime minister, right? That's why he was so deeply unlikable to that extent that he lost the he lost to a last minute addition in Mark Carney, right? Essentially. So because I know lots of people like to say, "Oh, he won more votes than the conservatives have ever won. Have ever won." You know, he brought new people. And my thing is, if you lose an election where you are 25 points up, don't tell me about how it's like running a race, a marathon 43.2 kilometers. You're leading all the way to 40 kilometers, and then you're saying something about how you thought the race was over or something like that. Like, who cares? Who cares? Like, he had to win that election, and he didn't do enough. And some people will say, "Oh, the NDP, the NDP vote went to the Liberals." Some of the vote went to the Conservatives. Why did it not win? Why did Poilievre not win more votes so he could be the one to win the election? So, anyways, we could go go down a rabbit hole there. But the Liberals now need only two votes from opposition parties in order to in order to pass this budget. Now, I think those votes are going to come from the NDP, as I've told you guys several times. I think those votes are going to come from the NDP. Either that or the NDP, some of the members of the NDP are going to abstain. That is what I think is going to happen. Yeah. So what else? What else did they put in the budget? Actually, there was something else here. There's something else here. I'm just gonna let me see where I put my notes here. Um, yeah. So that's the deficit, the programs, the climate strategy, fiscal. Oh yeah. So my biggest worry with my biggest worry with this particular budget. It is ambitious. It is very ambitious. And we're spending more money than ever, basically. But I have my biggest fear, and this is something that I was looking at this budget, and I was looking to myself and thinking, what this is no secret, right? Every time I hear people talk about the spending, I always say, I don't worry about the spending as much as I worry about our governments not knowing how to spend money, right? So it's one thing for them to like Justin Trudeau spent a lot of money. Justin Trudeau spent a lot of money. But you could argue that he spent that money on things that wasn't necessarily generating a return. Now, McCartney is telling us that he's going to spend money on things that are expected to generate a return. And I was actually looking in the budget here at the what they project to be the GDP growth over the next 5 years. And what here's what I see here. Here's what I see here. Um, the they obviously things have changed since Justin Trudeau delivered the fiscal since Chrystia Freeland's fiscal fall economic statement. I mean, was presented last year. Things have changed, and obviously with the tariffs and all those things, things are significantly worse now than they were last year, right? Before Donald Trump came to office. Now, I was looking at this budget, and they are projecting that they are projecting a GDP growth of basically less than 2% every year for the next 5 years. That's based on I imagine that is based on the current trajectory. That's Let me see if I've read that correctly. They are projecting let me see where did I see two I think it was page 229. 229, I think it was 229. So they are projecting essentially a deficit or growth of less than 2% over the next 5 years, right? Um, Under Justin Trudeau, they were projecting somewhere around 2%, but with things having changed over the last few months, now they're projecting uh, less than 2%. Now, my worry with this is this: if you're spending all this money, and you're telling me, and now obviously I imagine that they're telling the story in the budget on a from a conservative from a this is a conservative projection of what the GDP growth is expected to be. I do not think that they are really telling Canadians that they're about to blow through all the money that they want to blow through over the next 5 years, over the next 4 to 5 years. I don't imagine that the liberals are really telling people that they want to blow through all through that money and only grow the economy by 1.5% over the next 5 years. I don't imagine that is the story that they're trying to communicate here, right? However, what are the chances that that happens? What are the chances that the liberals spend all this money that they've put in their budget here, and we still don't see a material increase in the GDP. And GDP is a term that's up here, but really what that means, what that translates to is is you know hi, you being able to find jobs. The idea is that so for me, I've always said this, right? If the government spends money and they're able to, if that investment, as they like to call it, translates to more jobs for you and I, higher pay for you and I, affordable everything, that kind of thing. You know what? Cool. You can spend that money if we could trust the government to spend the money in a way that improves materially Canadians' lives, right? So it's never been the spending for me that's been my issue. You get me? But the problem is, if this fails, where does this leave Canada? Where does this leave Canada? Because essentially, obviously, they say, oh, the debt to GDP is not that bad relative to the G7. True. To the other countries in the G7, Canada is actually in a decent debt to GDP situation, right? That's what they think gives them the room to spend this much money. But also, if they spend this much money, the reverse side of that is if they spend this much money and achieve, say, obviously they're trying to catalyze $1 trillion in investment in Canada. If they fall short of that, and this money, all this money that they're putting in does not generate as much revenue, as much GDP growth as they expect, then we're in trouble at that point, right? And obviously, unemployment is pretty high right now. We will find out by the end of this month whether we're currently in a recession. It feels like a recession right now, but according to the numbers, it seems like, at least by the numbers, we have, just by the skin of our teeth, avoided a recession. A recession is basically defined as two consecutive quarters of declining GDP growth. Um, but obviously, it would appear that in the third quarter we didn't decline. We just got a positive there. Anyways, so you guys get in the comments. Tell me what we have. What, 5 minutes left here? I want to know if you guys have any extras you want to talk about the budget. I want to just, you guys just riff off for the next few minutes before I close the room here. Obviously, I will do a video. Yes, exactly, False Club. We are walking a tightrope, and it's the kind of tightrope where if you stick the landing, you look absolutely brilliant, right? But if you fall flat and land on your face, you look like a chump, you know, like a bloody chump, because you're the guy that decided to take the riskiest routes there is, and this is risky. But to be fair to Mark Carney, to be fair to Mark Carney, I don't know that there was another way for, like, what other budget would you make? I don't think a Polyev style budget where Polyev was requesting that the deficit be around $48 billion would have worked now, because that would have required you to cut very deeply into social programs for people at a time when people need support. Okay? So I don't think that kind of budget works. um Obviously, at the same time, the balance there is, I don't think a budget, in the sense that the NDP was projecting or was asking for, more and more essentially more supports for people, more than what we even have now. So essentially, maybe probably that translates to more social programs. I don't think doing that would have given us the room to grow this economy in the way that is necessary. So in that sense, if I was judging this budget, if I was being honest, I would say that the liberals have not done too badly with the cards that they've been dealt. That is my honest opinion. Feel free to agree or disagree. I think over the next year or two, we will start to see if McCartney is any different in terms of executing than Justin Trudeau. I know people like to say, oh, conservatives are obsessed with Justin Trudeau. Why wouldn't you be? Right? He is the I mean, he's the is the immediate past prime minister, had 10 years there, and grew the economy at the slowest pace that we probably that I've ever seen, certainly. Right? The economy just stagnated essentially under Justin Trudeau. And here you have McCartney. He is one man. Does he really change that track record? Can you expect better from a McCartney? Granted, he is leading in a way that maybe you might. Granted, he is leading in a way that you might expect maybe Polyev to lead. Maybe probably to. I would argue that McCartney has something which I think that Polyev does not have. And maybe in that sense, their roles right now are the best for that. I think the way they are, their roles right now best suits who they are. In the sense that McCartney seems to display a flexibility that I think is important for the prime minister right now. He's not married to a cause of action the way Justin Trudeau was. And we need that right now, right? As I said, he is being more conservative than maybe a lot of you might expect him to be, right? And at the same time, Polyev is rigid enough in his beliefs that he will push McCartney to deliver on the promises on the promises for sure, but he would push McCartney to be better. I think. So in that sense, I think their roles are perfect for who they are. Um, Another number says they are the dealer. Fox Club said, "Has anyone seen the movies H2O, The Last Prime Minister, or The Trojan Horse made by CBC? Are they now propaganda films? I've actually not seen those films. Are those on CBC Gem, or are those movies that I can catch elsewhere? Maybe on like a Netflix or Prime or even Crave. I might catch it on there. Um, so the title of this movie is H2O, the last Prime Minister and the Trojan Horse. Is that what those are, Folks Club? Anywho, anywho. So the problem um with this budget, and something I still want to see is, obviously there's a lot of banking on there's a lot of ifs and buts here, right? We hope that there will be Uh, commensurate GDP growth for all the money that Makani is about to spend. If there isn't, we are fucked. No doubt about it, right? Okay. But I he has to be he has presented the plan, and as I said, the problem with these governments is never a plan. It's not the lack of a plan. I mean, the problem with these governments, ooh, starring Paul Gross. Okay, okay, okay. The problem with these governments, I'll check out that film. I'll check out the film. Thanks for the recommendation, for Club. Um, but the problem with these governments is never a paucity of ideas. It's usually the execution. That's where they run into all these problems. But I do like the detail that McCartney went into in this budget. I think it does look like, to me at least, like a budget that someone spent 6 months preparing. It wasn't a rush job by any chance. It looks to me like they sat down and actually like crafted something that they felt like they could stand behind. Now, one last thing I will say before we close up shop for the night. I appreciate that some of you might be in Eastern Canada, and I don't want to keep you up here too late, and I don't want you falling asleep on me. Okay. Anyways, so there is a chance. It from what I'm hearing, it seems like more conservatives are currently speaking to the liberals. So there is a chance that Pierre Polyev might just lose a few more MPs to the liberals, which would be crazy to me, absolutely crazy, because it would mean that yet again, the liberals have outfoxed the conservatives, because while the conservatives were busy talking about, whether they would support the budget, or at least the leadership of the conservatives were talking about whether they would support the budget or not support the budgets, the liberals have basically pulled the blinder here, especially if they get the two more votes they need from the conservatives by getting people to cross the floor. Oh my God. I think that is grounds for Pierre Poilievre to lose the leadership review. Because how do you how like not only at that point, like, it's stacking up at that point. Not only have you lost the election, you almost gave up a majority from a majority yourself. You maybe had an opportunity to bring down the Carney liberals, and then you somehow, under your watch, people cross the floor and give the liberals a majority. Oh, that is done. That is done in my book. I think if that happens, Pierre Poilievre is done. He's not. I don't think he passes a leadership review if that happens. That is my perspective. But obviously, this conversation will continue. The voting for the budget is going to take place over the next week. At some point over the next week, what we know now is that the block are little bit salty. The block has said, "Oh, the liberals did not negotiate with us." And I'm like, yeah, damn straight. They shouldn't be negotiating with you. I don't like the block. I always say that next. Okay. But the obviously the bloc has been complaining about how the liberals did not negotiate with them, and I really like that the liberals did not negotiate with them. I think the bloc is a joke, but that's just my point of view. The conservatives, I'm not I'm not overly fussed about the conservatives, or at least the leadership of the conservatives, and the vast majority of the conservative MPs not choosing to side with the liberals. That is expected, right? And it would be highly it wouldn't be a good look for the conservatives if they support the budget now, because what did they ask for? They asked that the deficit not cross a certain threshold, $48 billion. It did. They said that the liberal government, should cut the industrial carbon tax. In their mind, they say that would make food more affordable. Now, the, there is a little bit of conflicting information about whether actually cutting the industrial carbon tax actually makes food more affordable. There's a little bit of conflict there between some experts and what the conservatives and the experts that the conservatives believe in. But you know, there's a whole discussion there I don't want to get into tonight. But from a perspective of principle, I understand why, and typically you wouldn't expect the official opposition to support the government on the budget anyways. Okay, so that is not a surprise for me. The Green Party, though, I was very I was thinking Elizabeth May would just be in some corner, watching what's going on, but she was maybe the first to come out and say they cannot support the budget as it is right now. They say that obviously the Greens are very focused on climate, and the possibility that the Liberals are going to do away with the emissions cap is really a sore point for them. And Elizabeth May was talking about finding some negotiations. I don't know that McCartney is going to negotiate with Elizabeth May. I think maybe that is way down the pecking order of some of the potential negotiations that McCartney might choose to have right now. There's less juice for the squeeze. Essentially, there's less juice for the squeeze. Why would he? Like, and to be fair, I think when it comes to the NDP, there is more in common there. Obviously, they've kept a lot of the social programs that the NDP wants. They've kept a lot of those. That is, I don't even know why the NDP is even thinking about not supporting this budget. To be fair, they said they will go through the budgets and see if it's something they can support. I don't see why they shouldn't support this budget. I think it's everything, to be honest, in my opinion. It is basically everything that they want. They want the preservation of programs. They want support for workers. Like, what's there not to love for the if you're the NDP, right? So it does make me really curious there. Except if the NDP thinks somehow that they can fight an election and somehow end up in a better position than they are right now. Which, frankly, I don't think if we go to an election right now that the NDP comes back with 7 seats. I think they come back with even less, to be honest. I don't know that the NDP has improved their position over where they were in the last election. But that's just my thought. Anyways, good talk with you guys tonight. I'm gonna just roll out the credits here. Thank you, Fox Club. Thank you, Northern Numbers. Thank you, Braveheart. Thank you, Lady Genuine. You didn't talk to me too much today, Lady Genuine. You were just here for like one comment, or two comments, and then you ran away on me. Angel 7, you just dropped in that Carney is woke. And then you never gave me any more details. What was that about? You just teased me like that. Why would you tease me like that? Jeez. Anyways, thank you as well for joining the conversation tonight. Adoy Fashion, thank you for joining the conversation tonight. And Braveheart, thank you for joining the conversation. I know this is not our regular programming, but obviously when big news happens, I will be live with you guys after work because usually I work during the week. Surprise, surprise, YouTube is not my actual job. but after work, if there's big news, obviously I'll be live. If you're new around here, please subscribe down below, drop a like on the video. We're back to regularly scheduled programming on Sunday. So we'll have our live show at 4 p.m. At 4 p.m. every Sunday, like we always do. But if something happens before then, I'll be live with you guys. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.